Lyssa Korvath had approximately 4 minutes before the atmospheric storm would turn the canyon into a death trap. Superheated winds carrying silicate particles that could strip flesh from bone, electrical discharges powerful enough to ionize the air, pressure differentials that collapsed unprepared structures like discarded packaging. She ran through the narrow passage toward the emergency shelter she'd spotted during her geological survey. Her environmental suit already showing stress warnings from the storm's leading edge. The Korvathi were known for their resilience, for surviving environments humans considered barely habitable, but even her species' adaptations couldn't protect her from what was coming. The shelter was human construction, basic, utilitarian, designed for exactly this kind of emergency on a planet humans had colonized 12 years ago, and her people had only recently been granted limited research access to. She punched the emergency override code, felt the door cycle open, and threw herself inside as the first true wave hit. The door sealed with solid mechanical certainty. Safe, at least temporarily. Lyssa collapsed against the wall, breathing ragged, her suit showing damage that would take hours to repair. The shelter was small, maybe 15 square meters, with basic life support, emergency supplies, sleeping accommodations for two. She was alone. She was safe. She could wait out the storm, repair her suit, return to her research base once conditions cleared. Then she heard breathing that wasn't hers. Lyssa's head snapped up, her eyes adjusting to the shelter's dim lighting. In the corner, partially obscured by supply containers, a human male sat with his back against the wall. He'd clearly been here before the storm hit, his own suit showing damage, his expression shifting from surprise to something she couldn't read. For 3 seconds, neither moved. Then every instinct Lyssa had developed over 6 months of careful observation, every warning her people had given about human unpredictability and capacity for violence, every story about what happened to Korvathi who found themselves alone with humans in isolated situations, all of it crashed through her mind in pure panic. She backed against the door, her hand moving to the emergency release, ready to throw herself back into the lethal storm rather than face whatever this human might do. Don't. The human's voice was quiet, his hands raised in what her cultural training recognized as a non-threatening gesture. The storm will kill you in seconds. Please don't open that door. Lyssa's hand hovered over the emergency release. Her rational mind knew he was right. The storm outside was certain death. But her instincts, shaped by months of stories about human aggression, were screaming that staying was equally dangerous. "I won't hurt you," the human said, maintaining his position, hands visible, making no move toward her. "I know you're scared, I can see it, but the storm outside is the real threat, not me, I promise." "Korvathi don't trust human promises," Lyssa said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Your species has a documented history of violence, of territorial aggression, of being pretty terrible sometimes, yeah." The human's expression was rueful. "I won't argue our history, but right now I'm just a geologist who got caught by the same storm you did. My name's Owen Reeves. I've been stuck here for about 2 hours waiting for this to pass." Lyssa studied him, her enhanced vision picking up details human eyes would miss, genuine exhaustion in his posture, damaged suit suggesting he'd been running from the storm same as her, absence of visible weapons. But absence of visible threat didn't mean safety. "You're Korvathi," Owen continued. "Research team from the northern base, probably, doing geological surveys in the canyon systems." "How do you know that?" "Because I'm doing the same surveys for the human settlement. We've been carefully avoiding each other for months, working opposite schedules, maintaining required distance protocols." Owen shifted, wincing. "Though I guess the storm doesn't care about protocols." Lyssa noticed he favored his left side, the damage to his suit concentrated around his ribs. "You're injured. Caught some debris during the storm front." "Nothing critical, just painful." Owen's hands remained raised, visible. "Look, I understand why you're afraid. I know the stories your people tell about humans. Some are probably accurate. We're not great at first contact historically. But I'm asking you to stay inside where it's safe and let both of us survive this storm. After that, if you want me to leave first, if you want me to stay on the opposite side, whatever makes you feel safer, I'll do it. The shelter's walls vibrated with storm intensity. Lyssa's suit readings showed external temperatures climbing toward lethal ranges, wind speeds that would make movement impossible. Owen was right. The storm was certain death. Staying was uncertain threat. Uncertain was better than certain. Marginally. You stay on that side, Lyssa said, her hand finally moving away from the emergency release. You don't approach me. You don't make sudden movements. And when the storm clears, you leave first. Agreed. Owen's relief was visible. Thank you for trusting me, even though I know you don't really. Thank you for choosing survival anyway. The first hour passed in tense silence. Lyssa positioned herself against the opposite wall, maintaining maximum distance, her eyes never leaving Owen as he carefully tended to his injured ribs. Every movement triggered her threat assessment, cataloging his reach, his strength, the ways a human could potentially cross the small space before she could react. But Owen kept his word. He stayed on his side, moved slowly, narrated his actions. I'm going to reach into the medical supplies now, just getting a pressure bandage for these ribs, telling you so you don't think I'm grabbing a weapon. He pulled out the bandage, held it up for her to see, applied it with visible discomfort. You should check your suit, Owen said after finishing. The storm got pretty violent before you made it inside. Your environmental seals might need attention. I can manage my own equipment. I'm sure you can, just offering the observation. Owen leaned back. How long have you been doing survey work in the canyons? Why do you want to know? Because making conversation seems better than sitting in hostile silence for however many hours this storm lasts. Owen's tone was gentle, almost amused. But if you prefer silence, that's fine too. Your call. Lyssa considered refusing. But the shelter's walls continued vibrating, and the silence was making her hyper-aware of every small sound, every potential threat. Maybe conversation was less dangerous than her own spiraling anxiety. 3 months, she said finally. I've been surveying the canyon systems for 3 months. The geological formations here are unique, layered mineral deposits suggesting cyclical environmental changes over millions of years. I noticed that too. Owen's expression brightened with genuine interest. The stratification patterns are remarkable. I've been trying to correlate them with the planet's orbital variations, see if there's a climate cycle we can predict. Despite herself, Lyssa found herself responding. The selenite layers suggest periodic high water content, but the distribution pattern doesn't match current precipitation models. Because the models are based on short-term human observation, Owen said. We've only been here 12 years. You'd need centuries of data to see the full cycle. Or geological record analysis. Exactly. They talked for another hour. About rock formations, mineral composition, planetary geology. Lyssa noticed herself gradually relaxing, her threat assessment instincts quieting as Owen demonstrated nothing but genuine scientific interest and careful respect for her space. Why did they tell you to be afraid of humans? Owen asked during a lull. What specifically do the warnings say? Lyssa hesitated. That humans are territorial, aggressive. That human history is marked by violence toward other species, toward each other. That being alone with a human in an isolated situation is dangerous, especially for Korvathi who appear vulnerable. And do I seem dangerous right now? You seem less dangerous than the warning suggested, Lyssa admitted. But that could be strategy. Humans are known for being deceptive. We can be, Owen agreed. So can most species when survival requires it. But I'm not being deceptive. I'm just a geologist who got caught in a storm and is genuinely happy to have someone to talk to about rock formations. He smiled slightly. Even if that someone is terrified, I'm going to attack her. I'm not terrified. You were ready to throw yourself into a lethal storm rather than stay in here with me. That's pretty much the definition of terrified. Owen's expression was kind, not mocking. I don't blame you. If the situation was reversed, I'd probably be scared too. 6 hours into the storm, Owen had fallen into exhausted sleep against the far wall. Lyssa watched him, her threat assessment instinct still active but notably quieter. He'd kept every promise, stayed on his side, made no threatening movements, shared emergency supplies without expectation, talked about geology with genuine passion. Nothing matched the warnings she'd received. When Owen woke, he found Lyssa had moved slightly closer. Not much, maybe a meter, but enough that the distance felt less hostile. Storm's still going, Lyssa said. Your suit readings show another 3 hours minimum before it's safe. Thanks for checking. Owen sat up carefully, ribs clearly still painful. Did you sleep? Korvathi don't require as much sleep as humans. I rested, but I was monitoring conditions. Ever the scientist, Owen smiled. Can I ask you something? You can ask. When you first saw me, when you almost ran back into the storm, what specifically made you that afraid? Lyssa considered carefully. There are stories about Korvathi researchers who disappeared near human settlements, about violence, about humans who saw us as threats or resources or just other, different in ways that made us targets. And those stories are probably based on real events, Owen said quietly. Humans have a documented history of being terrible to species we don't understand. We're working on it, but the history exists. Your fear was based on legitimate evidence. But you're not like the stories. I'm one human. I can't speak for my entire species any more than you can speak for all Korvathi. Owen looked at her directly. But I can tell you that most humans I know would have done exactly what I did, stayed on their side, kept promises, tried to make a scared person feel safer. We're not universally violent, we're just complicated. The warnings made you sound universally dangerous. Warnings tend toward worst-case scenarios. It's safer to assume threat. Owen shifted position. But it also means missing opportunities to actually understand each other. You're the first Korvathi I've talked to beyond formal professional exchanges. This conversation has taught me more about your people than 6 months of careful distance. Lyssa realized the same was true for her. I wasn't entirely fair to you, Lyssa said. I assumed threat based on species rather than individual. That's the same prejudice I accused humans of practicing. You assumed threat based on documented evidence and safety warnings from people trying to protect you, Owen corrected. That's not prejudice. That's caution. But I appreciate you recognizing I'm not personally dangerous. The storm began to diminish during the 8th hour. They monitored external readings together. Their earlier distance dissolved into collaborative observation. Safe enough to venture out soon, Owen said. I'll leave first like we agreed. You don't have to, Lyssa said. I mean you can if you want, but I'm not afraid anymore, not of you specifically. That's good to hear. Owen stood carefully. For what it's worth, Lyssa, can I call you Lyssa? At her nod. I'm glad the storm threw us together. I learned a lot about Korvathi resilience, about your perspectives, about how someone responds to fear with both caution and willingness to adjust when evidence contradicts expectations. I learned that humans can keep promises, Lyssa said, that they can recognize fear without exploiting it, that they can be genuinely interested in knowledge for its own sake, also remarkable qualities. Maybe our people should try actually talking to each other, Owen suggested, instead of maintaining careful distance based on historical worst cases. Maybe they should. They left the shelter together as the storm cleared, stepping into a canyon transformed by violence into new geological formations. Both immediately wanted to study. The careful distance their peoples maintained was still technically required. But Lyssa found herself thinking about ways to challenge that protocol, about research that might benefit from collaboration. She'd hidden in a shelter expecting solitude. She'd found a human and panicked. And in the hours that followed, she discovered that fear based on stories could be complicated by reality, that species-wide warnings couldn't account for individual character, and that sometimes the most dangerous choice, staying with a human she'd been taught to fear, could also be the safest.